You're listening to the Bird Dog Babe podcast with my mom, Courtney Bastion.
And then you take ethical shots when you're hunting, you're going to reduce crippling. So think about if each one of us did that. And we reduced that number in half, which I think you could do the first year with these narratives, with this change of culture. I think you'd be sending 1.8 million back to the nest. So think about that. You don't need more government legislation. You don't need anything federally mandated. We don't need anybody to tell us anything. This is something as a community we can do together, and we should do it together. Sportsmen have always been the original conservationists. And that's one thing that I feel is being lost, especially with the younger generation.
Hey, Bird Dog Babes. My name is Courtney Bastion, and I am obsessed with all things bird dogs. And I'm here with you to share the stories, experiences, knowledge, and opinions from the women and a few guys in the industry that are killing it. I'm a Wisconsin girl living in a Montana world. I'm mom and two incredible kiddos, wife and occasional assistant to a pro gun dog trainer, traveling the U.S. talking about canine nutrition while hunting, breeding, and competing with my German wire hair pointers and Bracco Italianos. As someone who started hunting later in life because I wanted to give my dogs the opportunity to do what they were bred to do, I'm here to help inspire, educate, and connect women to get their bird dogs out in the field and experience a bond like no other. So pour yourself a glass of wine and get ready to be challenged and encouraged while you learn. This is the Bird Dog Babe podcast. My guest today is Lee Kjos. Some of you may know him as a professional photographer of Kjos Outdoors, as an avid duck hunter, or one of the owners of Boss Shotshells. I know him as a man who is truly authentic, genuine, speaks truth, and is one of the most passionate sportsmen I have ever had the chance to talk with. He is dedicated to education and conservation, and if you've ever had a chance to turn off everything else and tune into something good for an hour and a half, let this be it. We as hunters and conservationists owe this to the birds, our lands, and to our grandkids. We can do better. We must do better. Thank you to sponsor Dakota 283, unparalleled protection for traveling to and from your favorite hunting spot. Dakota 283 Kennels are premium quality roto-mold with recessed handles on top for convenient and safe tie-down and makes it easy to lift up into the truck. I love the secure door frame with high security locks so I know my dogs are safe when I need to stop for fuel. An added bonus is the drain hole in the back, which makes cleaning a breeze when your dog has been run hard and put away wet. Head over to Dakota283.com and use promo code BirdDogBabe for a 10% discount. Thanks to sponsor Excel Shooting Sports, elite dealer of Caesar Guarini, Fab Arm, and Siren shotguns. Siren is the world's only full line of shotguns created for the female competitor, hunter, and shotgun enthusiast. Excel is one of only 4 demo centers west of the Mississippi. They give you the opportunity to actually try out a gun before you walk out the door with it. As an elite dealer for Caesar Guarini, Excel offers their customers unlimited pit stops of free service and tune-ups on all shotguns, a great way to have your gun in top condition for the upcoming hunting or target season. In addition, they're offering an exclusive deal to all of the Bird Dog Babe listeners for a free gun slip with each purchase, a $90 value. Good morning, Lee. Welcome to the podcast.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on Monday morning.
I know, Monday morning, last to do this week. So I'm glad that you were able to fit this into your schedule. First of all, I want my listeners to get an idea of a little bit about who you are. You've been hunting for how long?
Oh, well, I'm 60. First of all, do you mean who I am? You mean Boss, or do you mean Kjos?
You. Nope.
Oh, yeah.
You, Lee
Okay.
Kjos. I want to know all about you.
I'm 60 years old, and I've been hunting and fishing since, forever. I mean, literally. I mean, Mom and Dad took me. I think the first time they told me I was in a boat fishing, I was six weeks old or something like that, and they brought me everywhere. I mean, Mom wasn't with as much as Dad was, but Mom was a sportswoman. See, I struggle with men, women. That's why I call them all Bossman now.
Yeah,
but
no worries.
We'll get into that later. But
yeah,
a major outdoor family, hunting and fishing, and in particular, we were our duck hunters. And I think by the time I was like 12 or 13 years old, I'd hunted in, I think, 13 different states and 4 provinces. My dad was a traveling sportsman before it was, before it was a thing. So when I was little, I got to see it all up close. And I guess the other part, I mean, a lot of people, I guess, I don't know, it's hard to talk about myself in these terms, but they might recognize my name or from photography in the outdoor world. Lots of covers in national magazines like Ducks Unlimited and Outdoor Life and Sports Afield and Shooting Sportsman and Wildfowl and Gundog and Covey Rise and lots of that. So anyway, when I was a little kid, I've always loved ducks, everything about them, everything, whether looking at them and watching them fly or eating them or hunting them or carving them or painting them, photograph, whatever. When I was a little kid, though, my dad had a camera. So I for some reason, I always loved to try to document where I was, and not necessarily, I don't think necessarily, probably when you're little, you don't think about it in terms of this, but I always tell people no one takes a picture of something that they don't want to remember. I think that's at the root of like why we photograph or why we try to capture an image and maybe freeze that moment in time. That's certainly the reason I did it. I didn't do it for others. I strictly did it for myself. And even to this day, I mean, a big part of who I am is the work that I've done in the outdoor industry. And yeah, I have a job to do, and I have to execute a shot list for clients, but I'm really out there doing it for me.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That sounds selfish, but I always say if I'm happy with my work, the client's going to be thrilled. So
do you find yourself being your biggest critic as far as your work?
Oh, for sure. I mean,
yeah.
I had a guy I think it was Friday, contacted me and he said, has anybody done a book on you yet? And I'm like, no. And he goes, would you consider it? And I'm like, well, I mean, sure, I suppose if it's nice, if it's beautiful, I'd consider it. And he goes, have you ever pulled your 100 favorite images? And I'm like, I don't have 100. There's a half a dozen of them that come to mind that I like a lot. But so I guess I am pretty hard on myself.
I remember, I think was on your Instagram page, you said your favorite picture, is it one of your dogs that was?
Yeah, it was Tal.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then the story behind that.
Terrible.
We don't need to get into it, but I think that's something.
No.
So, so how long have you had dogs in your life? Did you grow up with them?
Yes. But first of all, I mean, in person, if I ever meet you in person, we can have that conversation, but it's really hard for me it's a tough one. But so, yeah, maybe someday in person. I had my first dog when I was 13. I had an English Springer Spaniel, and I went to obedience classes with him, and his name was Fowler, and he was my buddy, and he was a good pheasant dog, was a really good pheasant dog, and adequate rough grouse dog for back in those days, because grouse they behaved a little bit different than they do today. Mm-hmm. And he turned out to be a pretty darn good duck dog too. Good enough for me as a 13-year-old, but so yeah, I've had a bunch of dogs.
And are the majority of them, you had the Springer then, but now do you have one lab now or two labs?
I only have one now. I've had as many as four. But I have one yellow male right now by the name of Cap, who, well, he's a really, really cool dog. I've had some good ones. I've even had maybe a great one, mm-hmm. even by professional standards, but this is the best dog I've had. But there's a lot that goes into that. I think you know Tom Dokken, right? I mean, Doc
well,
was
I don't. I know Tina. I don't.
Oh, you know Tina.
Don't know Tom. Yep.
Oh,
mm-hmm.
you know the other Dokken then. That's
I do.
Oh yeah, Tina's my buddy for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But Tom and I are close, and he had a big hand in Cap, and he liked Cap, and he liked working with him, and yeah, he turned out to be a really cool dog.
Cool. So did he do his Cap's training then? Did Tom?
Yeah, he did. I mean, I did like a lot of the puppy type stuff, and Doc gave me a lot of things to do, and I did it. And I think Tom told me, he goes, "This is the best shape you've ever brought a puppy to me in. He's really cool dog." And then Doc did the heavy lifting for sure. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, he's the best.
And it's kind of funny because it's a very roundabout way in how I came into connection with you, because I had reached out to the Boss with just some questions I had on.
You must not have asked me though.
I didn't.
If people ask me questions, I'm the one that answers the question. So.
No, I called in. And then I was put in touch with Zach.
Zach would help. Yeah, he would. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, he was fantastic. He answered all my ridiculous questions, and then at one point he said, "Let me put you in touch with," he said, Lee Kjos, one of the owners, and I was like, "Well, that name looks familiar," and because when I did a episode with Tina a couple months ago, she gave me one of the photos that you took of her, and so I put your name on there as photo credit, and so I saw when he said he was putting you in touch, I'm like, well, that name looks really familiar. Is he a photographer? and so so it was kind of a roundabout cool way that
did you get your answers that you were looking for?
Oh, totally. Yeah,
good.
Completely. Good. And then some. And it was, and we can get into some of those because it's something I would like my listeners to hear about as well. So you took the move of adding ownership of Boss to your line of accomplishments and things that you're up to right now.
That's yeah. Yeah,
in your
true.
already busy schedule.
Yeah.
So Boss has been around for, is it 2 years now, Lee?
Excuse me. Yep. October 6th of 18, we launched it on IG. Okay.
So give me some of the motivations here in how and why you got involved and got this started.
The partner I have, there's more than one now, but at that time I had a partner, and he flew up from Michigan. His name's Brandon Surecki, and he showed me the shell, and I looked at the shell and how it was made, and I listened to him talk about his ideology when it comes to American business and American ingenuity, and really had an interest then. But with with what I've done in the past, marketing for big outdoor companies, I knew this was one that, well, was right in my wheelhouse, and it's a duck. It's a shotgun shell. So it's bird hunting, So it was pretty easy for me in the beginning to yeah, I can do it. That new term that everybody uses, bandwidth. I guess I didn't know if I had the bandwidth because of all my Kjos Outdoors work. But we talked and we decided to do it, first thing we talked about was the consumer and making the very, very best shell that can be made at a reasonable price. We talked about retail versus direct to consumer. And we both agreed that going direct to consumer would be the way to go, the way that we could control the quality long term and the product and even grow the quality and the line without big box or retail or anything middlemen or big markups, anything getting in the way of that, where we could continually get better. And we decided to do it. And I came up with, so Brandon he's the inventor. He's the maker of the shell. He's the guy that came to me. His name's Brandon Surecki. He's a generational metal plater, blue collar dude that has a metal plating shop in Bridgman, Michigan. And I think his grandfather started it. Then it was his father's. Now it's his. It's classic America, right? Mm-hmm. It's classic. Right. And I love that. I could get myself in trouble too talking because I'm very opinionated. I'm very Chinese manufacturing. I'm not a big box store guy, big box store retailer guy, massive middlemen markups. I think it's led to a lot of lousy product over the course of a few decades here. And we think if we'd rather create 2 jobs in America than trade hours for corporate or for foreign profits.
So is that something that's common in ammo? And that's just because I'm not aware of it.
I wouldn't say that. I would say it's common. I would say it's common in the big companies.
Okay. Yeah.
In the conglomerates that they are. I think almost everything today is made for quarterly profits and shareholder meetings. I think the consumer has been taken a back seat for decades, certainly since the lead ban in 1991. It's never been about the consumer. So I think that's why Boss is doing what it's doing right now, is because it's resonating with the people and they know it's the truth. And it's the first time they've seen it.
Right. Being educated on it, I can vouch for.
And we educate. That's a huge part of the part of the Boss narrative, or a Boss narrative would be education, conservation, habitat. There's lots of them. I could probably bore you to death with lots.
No. Well, and so I gather from what we've talked and what I've kind of gone through on your website, you guys, so Boss has like 3 main initiatives. So 1, patterning, 2, decrease the crippling of birds, and 3, conservation. Would you say that those are your top 3?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So, and along the way within there, how do you change those narratives? They've been here for so long. How do you change them? So that's the other part. So here's the goal. Now, how do you do it? Right? I mean, non-toxic Well, first of all, we're into only non-toxic loads, and we're 100% committed to eliminating cripples. Now, we all know you can't eliminate cripples, but if you're committed to eliminating it, it should get us a long way into reducing it by a big number, right? I mean, a number that's going to make a difference. We're into American-made ingenuity. We're all about exceptional customer service and conservation of the birds that define our life. That's why we do this.
Let's tackle each of those a little bit separately. So in the crippling issue, crippling is when we're putting a couple pellets into the bird, they're injured, but they're still flying off. Is that how you're defining that?
They're alive. They're not dead.
Okay.
Yep. Regardless of whether
they've been
they're
wounded.
Flying, running, swim. Yep. You didn't kill them.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So how common is that? How big of an issue is crippling? Do you know?
Huge issue. Okay. So I read this report, U.S. Fish and Wildlife data, where they thought there was I'd have to go back and look at it, but the date I read when it was published, but was a number like between 3.4 and 3.7 million a year waterfowl a year were lost due to crippling. Okay, so
that's massive.
And then that got me. I'm like, you hear it, and you're like, really? Can that be true? And it just drives you nuts. And I'm sure you're like me. If you're a bird hunter, you know how painful it is to lose a cripple. So, okay, so think about that times whatever. Mm-hmm. Okay, so once I started to read that, I started to dig deep. Started to call biologists, friends that were biologists. I started to talk to a lot of people. And although the number is very difficult to pin down, as you can imagine, how could you really pin down a number? But everybody said, oh, yeah, it's big. It's a big number. One study I read back in Stuttgart, Arkansas area, back, I believe, in the 50s. I mean, that is the heyday of hunting mallards in trees in Arkansas, mid-50s. And I think that report said it was about 30 to 35% loss compared to what's recovered. And that was back then. Okay, and that's shooting lead. Okay, well, now take 3 decades now of shooting steel, which is not a very good killer. That's math. That's not my opinion. That's math. And I mean, if there's one thing I could do, boss, when I say I mean boss, if there's one thing we could do, it would be to drastically reduce that number. So let's say, so you go, well, how do you do that? Well, the first thing you do is you buy a better shell. Okay. Now, is there other good shells other than Boss? Well, yeah, of course there is. I mean, they're expensive, but they're good, right? We just happen to have what we feel is the very best shell for the very best price for an average hunter. So if you take that and then you pattern your shell, meaning you put it on paper at 30 and 40 yards and you start to choke it properly and you learn the relationship between your shell, the bore diameter you're shooting, 12, 20, whatever you're shooting, and you pattern and then that choke and you see what it does and you go, holy cow, there's a big hole in my pattern right there. Or you start to go the other way and you're tightening it up and you go, man, that's pretty awesome at 40 yards. I mean, I can't see a duck or a goose or a pheasant getting through that. And then you just start to learn. And once you see it, then you'll understand it. Then the other part of it is if you practice and then you take ethical shots when you're hunting, you're going to reduce crippling. So think about if each one of us did that and we reduced that number in half. which I think you could do the first year with these narratives, with this change of culture, right? I think what you'd be sending 1.8 million back to the, going based on that number I told you before, you'd be sending 1.8 million back to Nest. So think about that. You don't need more government legislation. You don't need anything federally mandated. We don't need anybody to tell us anything. This is something as a community we can do together, and we should do it together. Sportsmen have always been the original conservationists. And that's one thing that I feel is being lost. So, especially with the younger generation. So all of those things would be great things. And that's what I call like boss narratives. That's what I'm talking about.
And on the patterning, so I did this for the first time yesterday. And so 10 years that I've been hunting and shooting, and I asked my husband, I said, have you ever done this before? And he hadn't. And I think it's something, you know, when I've just started shooting a rifle this year, is my first year. I didn't actually go hunt. I just was at the range feeling comfortable with it. But with a rifle, that's something that's just everybody does before they go out hunting.
Right.
It's one of those no-brainers. And I don't know that I've ever heard of anybody talking about patterning a shotgun. And now that I have, holy cow, we both learned a lot. And just seeing this is how I'm shooting. This makes more sense. And this is, I think my husband right away said, well, you clearly need to get some new chokes for Christmas. So, it was different because he has really good chokes in his gun. And we were shooting Boss and another brand shell at 30 yards. And then we did modified and improved cylinder. So with both of those. And it was a really cool learning experience. When I was kind of doing some reading about Boss before I bought them, and like I talked to Zach, he answered a lot of questions, and I said, okay, I'm going to buy 2 boxes of 3-inch 5s and 2 boxes of 3-inch 7s, and I'm going to try them out. And I thought, oh, this is really going to make my shot look good. Okay, so this is what I learned about patterning. I'm either going to, because you guys have such a tight pattern, and it was the first night, I think FedEx arrived at about 1 p.m. in the afternoon, and I went out grouse hunting. I got out there around 3, so I had an hour and a half, and I shot a grouse with a 7, and I posted a picture of it actually to social media, and I said like something about, how's that for pattern density? Because the bird just dropped. But there's been a couple shots I've taken where I'm like, how on earth did I just miss that? How on earth did I miss that? And now that I did the patterning yesterday, I understand how I missed it, because Boss has this pattern density where when you shoot, you're either going to hit it and put it down, or you're going to completely miss it. You're not going to just put a couple pellets in it and cripple it, like you said earlier. And doing that patterning, it was a huge learning experience. Yeah,
for sure. Well, remember that you can miss too. I mean, so it's, the shell's not going to make you a better shot. If you do, it's going to make you a better killer, a more effective, a more effective humane killer, right? I think we owe it to the birds to do our best there. It's just like you said, if somebody draws a sheep tag and they're going archery sheep or they're going rifle sheep, if they don't have a gun, they get a gun, they buy a premium scope, they buy a premium round, they practice, they actually train physically, they get in what's called sheep shape. The archery guys are way into it because they got to get close. They're into their bow, they're into their sight, they're into the grain, they're into the arrow and the grain of the broadhead, and should I practice with field? I mean, they're way into it because they're going to take a shot, right? They train and do practice for a shot. But for some reason in this waterfall and upland hunting culture, we don't have that. We don't have that in our culture, and we need it. You're going to take a shot to try to kill a duck. Do your best. Put forth your best effort to kill that thing. Don't just go buy a gun, assume it shoots, assume its point of aim is where you want it, assume this choke is right with this. You can't. It's just not the way it works, you know? So you're talking about Boss. And, yep. Oh, you got to practice. And you're talking about Boss, and you're talking about a modified or improved cylinder choke. Okay. Here's the thing. When you see, you can, Boss has the ability to really shoot tight. But now think about hunting rough grouse and woodcock on opening day in northern Minnesota, where you hear more than you see, but the ones that you see and you get a shot at is a fleeting shot because of the amount of foliage on the trees and the closeness of the flush when you see it. You don't want it that tight. Duck and goose hunting late in the year, where you might have a lot of 30 to 40 yard shots and then some beyond, you do want it tight. You want to put it on them. That's why you need to know what they do. So your gun, I believe we talked a week or so ago, and correct me if I'm wrong, but do you not shoot a Caesar Greenie?
I do. Yep. So I have the Siren. Yep.
Okay.
A 20 gauge.
Yep. Okay. So what chokes came with it? Or did you buy a fixed choke gun?
No, I got the factory chokes with it.
Okay. What did you get?
I think I have 5.
Okay.
Modified.
So you probably got like skeet, improved cylinder, modified, improved, modified, and full. Something like that?
That sounds right.
Something like that.
Yeah. I don't know if I have a skeet or not, but I don't know.
Did you put your full choke in?
No, I didn't.
Go try that.
Okay.
Go from the most open choke you have to full, to the tightest one you have at 30 yards. Put up a 40-inch square piece of paper, put a little dot in the middle of it, aim at that, back up 30 yards, aim at that dot, shoot it. Walk up to it, look at where the densest part of that pattern is, and then draw a 30-inch circle around the densest part of that pattern, and then count it up. Do the math, and then get back to me, and I'll tell you how many BBs, pellets, are in that shell, and we'll do the math, and I'll start to show you a ratio or a percentage of pellets inside that 30-inch circle. And once you get your head wrapped around it, it's definitely going to make you better. In all, I don't know, when you love hunting prairie birds, right?
I do mainly rough grouse.
Oh, you do mainly roughs. Okay, so you totally understand what I'm talking about when it comes to roughs.
Oh, yeah.
You hunt them early in the year, and they're 15-yard shots.
Mm-hmm.
You start hunting them later in the year.
Season.
And they're spooky, and they're runners, and lots of them don't want to hold, and you might start having 30 and 40-yard shots in the woods. That's a different deal, right?
Yeah.
But
yeah, it's a challenge. We talked a little bit about the importance of, or you said the game within the game is with chokes. And I think we could do a whole new, another episode on that in general. Because I don't know enough about that and how much that can really improve your shot in the game. But
why don't next year, like preseason or something, we'll schedule another podcast and we'll just go over patterning your gun.
Yeah, no, that would be really good. Yeah, because that's such a key portion to this. I wish I had done much earlier.
Well, it's not too late, trust me.
I know.
No.
I know. all these things I'm learning late on.
Mhm.
So let's talk about, so Boss, you guys are completely non-tox. You have the option of copper-plated bismuth and tungsten.
Yes.
So why copper-plated bismuth?
Well, the copper plating really had a great effect. It didn't start out that way. It started out just Brandon's recipe of bismuth.
Okay.
And I'm, like I said, he's 38-year-old whiz kid, whip smart. And I'm 60, so I shot a lot of ducks and geese with lead back in the day, right?
Mm-hmm.
My favorite shell was a Winchester XX copper plated buffered load of like number 6s. Fantastic shell. The best shell ever made for killing. Just toxic as all hell, right? But just a killer. So he called me he texted me late one night and he goes, "Hey dude, are you up?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm up." He goes, can I call you? I'm like, "Sure." So he calls me and we sit there and talk, and he goes, "What was that shell you told me that you loved?" And I told him, and he said, "I'm thinking about copper plating our bismuth and see what it does." And I'm like, "Cool." So we'll make this short. He owns a metal plating company. So he goes, "I'm going to the other end of the building and I'm going to copper plate this stuff." I think he stays up all night and he patterns it. He makes it, loads a bunch, and does test patterns with the same gun and choke we used before to do the other testing. And he calls me back and he's just stoked. And he goes, "You're not going to believe this." He goes, 15%, 10 to 15% pattern density better, and penetration in the gel block was crazy good. Just like equivalent to lead like, right? So that's what I didn't want to have happen was he's like, "I'm going to copper plate everything." And I'm like, okay, we hadn't been in business that long and we didn't want to do a price increase. You know, you don't want to do that right away. I'd feel bad doing that. And he said, "F it." He goes, "I should have made that shell that good to begin the first time." He goes, we'll eat the cost and we'll pass the savings on to the consumer." So I thought that was super cool. Yeah. It's something that you could only do if you were a direct to consumer company. And that really is, like, things like that, I would say, are really the backbone of the Boss company, the Boss Shotshell company. I mean, that's the kind of things that we want to do. We tell consumers all the time, we're not going to get worse. We're never going to take the cost out of that shell. We're only going to make the company better. That's it. That's it. I tell people all the time, we all do. You have our word on that.
So with the bismuth, that's something that the older shotguns can safely shoot now as well, right?
Yep. Yes.
So whereas steel, they can't. And
correct.
So these awesome vintage guns of grandpas can be coming back out in the field or blind with us.
Yep. Blow the dust off them. Yep.
Right. That's pretty cool. Very
cool. Very cool. There's a lot of vintage guns that are out in action right now, and you know, those users, those customers, they send us really cool messages and notes and note of thanks, and it's really pretty cool.
And I think I saw one in the Boss Facebook group where a guy had posted about it was because of the Boss shells that my grandpa was able to shoot with me today. Because that was the only gun grandpa had and couldn't put steel through it. So I just think that goes beyond so much of everything else, and having that memory and having that moment for that guy.
right? There's one young fella out there, and he sent us a DM on opening day, not this year, 2 years ago in Michigan. And it was a photograph of him, his father, and his grandfather. And his father and grandfather hadn't hunted ducks since the lead ban in 1991. And all three of them were out on opening day. The old man was shooting a Browning A5 squareback, and the dad was shooting a Model 12. And the kid was shooting a Benelli, I think, something like that. But he said it's the first time they'd been hunting in that long, and it was because of Boss. I mean, that's heartwarming. I mean, I would never, ever would have thought anything like that.
That's incredible.
But yeah, I would have never thought anything like that could be possible, but it is. I mean, back in the lead ban, it started in the late 80s, but by 91, it was nationwide. I mean, you had to buy a new gun. Think about that. Think about if something came out right now and you go, oh, your guns are all irrelevant. You got to buy a new gun. So think about how many waterfowling pieces are out there that are still, well, they're not only great, they're better than a lot of what's made today. And yeah, they're back in action. Super cool.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, speaking of bird dogs, I want to take a quick second to share an opportunity for you to help the AKC Canine Health Foundation, which is the largest nonprofit funder of health research focused solely on dogs. If you're one of my Patreon patrons, a portion of your $5 per month goes to the AKC Canine Health Foundation. I've partnered with them to fundraise for 3 initiatives: hemangiosarcoma, epilepsy, and tick-borne disease. I'll be mailing out one of their calendars to each person that donates, so head over to www.akcchf.org/birddogbabe to designate a dollar amount and which initiative you would like to support. I'll throw in a cool Bird Dog Babe sticker in the mailing as well. Come on, Bird Dog Babe community, let's help this amazing foundation get closer to answers on these issues that are affecting our bird dogs. The waterfowl hunters have just taken this shell by storm in the last 2 years because it is such a great alternative to steel. But you just don't hear about it so much yet in uplands, where I think it needs to be talked about more.
Yeah.
And
it's probably my fault. That probably is. I bear the.
What do you mean?
Brunt. Well, because I'm a duck hunter, man. I mean, I can talk. Well, I'm an upland.
You shoot
guy
rough
too.
grouse. I've seen the picture.
Oh man, I love them. I love rough grouse, and I love wild ringnecks, and I love Hungarian partridge and shooting sharptail in Southwest Saskatchewan. I mean, I love it. I love that too, right? Okay. But I'm a duck hunter, and it's easy. It's so easy for me to talk about duck hunting because, I mean, when you hear people say like stuff's in your blood, it's in my blood. I mean, I really never even had a chance to not be a duck hunter. But anyway, it's my fault. But here's the deal. We have this program. It's an initiative. It's not a program. Did I share it with you, that unleaded one?
You did. Yeah.
Okay. We're going to get behind this as a community, and we're going to move the needle in the uplands, and we're going to do our best to, and I don't want this to be like I'm preaching or you're trying to railroad anybody or shove anything down anybody's throat. I just want people to know there's a really good alternative to lead. We've removed lead from many things, right? In society, it's time to remove lead from the environment. So that's going to be my big push for next year. And I'm going to count on people like you
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
you
and
know.
I mean, when we talked about earlier, after I learned more about this, I'm like, wow, I feel like such an asshole for not knowing and just shooting lead for as much as I have. And, we're training dogs. And so right here on our property, we've been throwing a lot of lead around the yard.
The more research that you take upon yourself to do when you start reading about lead poisoning, I mean, there's alarming. Like, I read one between what's roughly 20 million non-game birds and animals die a year to lead poisoning. Right? I read one from a biologist down south. I believe it was in Georgia. It was a wild quail dude. And he said a male bobwhite that ingests one lead pellet, that's enough to kill one bobwhite. And I'm like, really? So, and bottom line is, don't you think, like you said, you felt bad. I think you used the word asshole. I think that's too harsh. I think that's a bit harsh, but, well, I know a lot of assholes. So trust me, I don't think you're probably one of them, but, here's what I do think though. I think if we laid it out there in a way where you present it just like, well, here's this and here's this. What do you think we should do? I think a lot of people would go, well, yeah, why are we doing this? That's what I think. I think most people, sportsmen, would go, yeah, it's time we get this out of the environment. That's what I think.
Yeah.
So,
I don't think I'll ever go back to lead, just knowing what I know now. But to be fair, what a pain in the ass to be out there and have to switch out ammo. When you're in the uplands and then you're going to go to an area that has water around it, and you can't have lead in your, on you at all. So you're walking back to the truck. And why not just carry the non-tox the whole time?
Shoot the boss.
Right.
Learn it. Learn how it works. Learn how it behaves in your favorite gun with chokes at distance, and carry one shell. I mean, for you with what you do, there's nothing that you're not going to kill with a number 7 or a number 5. Nothing.
Right.
That includes ducks and geese when they're geese in closer with that 5.
I was on about a 10-day hunting trip. I started in South Dakota a couple weeks ago, and I ran out of 5s, and because I had just ordered those 2 boxes to begin with to try them out. And then before I left, I ordered a case, but it hadn't arrived yet. So I ran out of 5s, and I pulled out my 7s because I had the option of shooting the 5 leads in my truck, but I'm like, wouldn't it be nice to go in and out of the state of South Dakota, not leaving a trace? And that's our initiative in so many things. When you go in and leave no trace.
Like you were never there.
Right. Yep. So you know what? I put the 7s in, and I was still dropping pheasant with them. So it was,
they hit hard.
They do.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
They do. It's really crazy. But no, then my husband joined me in Eastern Montana with the case of 5, so we were good the rest of the time. But tell me about that. So when we're choosing shells, do we have to make decisions of what we know of how lead performs and relate that the same or different than what the bismuth does?
I mean, what do you shoot for lead? I mean, everybody would say you drop down a size. I mean, but let's be clear here. If you shoot a number 5 lead or a number 6 lead, shoot a Boss 5.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
But then there's guys like me that love smaller shot sizes and pattern density. The weight, it's really not weight, it's density of the pellet. There's two two times we use the word density, and they're different things. So I don't want this to be confusing. When you talk about weight of metal, it's really not weight, it's density. Cubic grams per centimeter, okay? Our shot shell is a lot denser than steel. So math tells you that if you could get hit in the head with a ping pong ball or get hit with a marble, and like one of them's going to hurt, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the math part of that. That's density. Okay. Then you have pattern density. And when you go from a number like a steel 3-inch 2 or 3-inch BB to a Boss 3-inch 5, I mean, you're literally gaining hundreds of pellets. Well, those pellets with weight density make this big, huge difference in pattern density. Again, you can do all this, and then the next time we talk, you're going to say, hey, I went out and I shot some 3-inch steel 2s, and then I shot a Boss 2 3/4-inch 5, and the difference is incredible. Yeah, It is. It's incredible. You talk to people that are like waterfowl hunters that hunt on water, and they're used to shooting 3-inch 2s or 3-inch BBs, and they cripple a bluebill on the water. You can't kill that bluebill on the water with a 3-inch 2 steel. You don't have enough density in pattern to kill it. But with that 2 3/4-inch 5, you will.
Okay.
So it's lots of it is you're solving a math problem, right? Mm-hmm. And then when you add skill to it, like your own skill, like you're honing your skill, you're trying to become a better shot, you're doing all this, you're going to become a better killer. You can't not.
Right.
And I think we like I said earlier, yes, that's it. We owe it. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it.
I always say it's like we spend how much time training our dogs for hunting season every year. And what are we doing training ourselves and improving our game? So we owe it to the birds and the dogs.
Boy, what are we doing? Yeah, that's good. That's really good.
So let's talk about your options. So why the 3-inch versus the 2 3/4 when I'm choosing. So like for my 20 gauge, I have the option of the 2 3/4 of the 7 or the 5 of Boss, and then, or else in a 3-inch as a 7, 5, 4, 3, or a mix of 3 and 5s. So help me out in like the differences with the 3-inch and the 2 3/4.
It's only number of pellets in the shell. It's not, it doesn't have more range. It doesn't have more power. There's nothing different other than the amount of pellets in the shell. So 2 3/4-inch 5 versus a 3-inch 5, you got a few more pellets.
Okay.
So you'd go, well, where's the benefit? Well, I mean, if you think the pattern density, the added pattern density matters that much, shoot the 3-inch. I personally don't. If you hit the bird, you're going to kill it with a 2 3/4-inch shell. Now, look at it this way. Again, the lead ban happened in 1991, and for 3 decades, roughly, it started in the 80s, so let's say 3 and change a little bit, you're looking at everything being 3-inch. Everything. There's a whole generation that don't know anything other than a 3-inch shell, and some of them even 3.5-inch. So there's a tough narrative to change, because people are like, what? You shoot a 2 3/4-inch 5? Yes. But our 2 and 3, our standard 2 3/4-inch shell has the same payload as a 3-inch steel. So 1 1/4 ounce in a steel 3-inch versus 1 1/4 ounce in a 2 3/4 Boss. So payload, right? The payload's right? So now a 3-inch Boss would be 1 3/8 or 1.5 ounces, which used to be like an old school 3-inch lead shell.
Okay.
So we tell people all the time, especially the older dudes that know this, that our copper-plated Boss behaves and acts just like old school lead. And that's what we hear from. That's really fun to hear that from the old timers when they call. Hey, it's fun. Does that make sense? The difference? You really don't need 3-inch shells. It's so ingrained in our head right now. You don't,
Right.
especially with 20 gauge and your upland birds.
Yeah.
2 3/4 inch 20s are awesome.
Okay. Well, you guys I've tried to get them, but for the last couple of weeks, I'm looking. You guys are out of stock on them right now. When are you getting them back in? When are you gonna?
Next year, probably.
Okay.
2 3/4 inch, 2 3/4 inch 20 gauge will probably be next year. We have to try to forecast and plan for what next year looks like. And when we did this last year, I mean, we're thrilled about this, but we're also blown away at how well we've been accepted into the waterfall and upland community. It's crazy, right? It's blowing up. It really is.
The customer service that you guys provide and being able to put a super high quality product at an affordable price. So, I mean, for 20 gauge, it's $27 for a box of shells. And then in comparison to the other brand that we were buying, lead was $30 and then steel was $26. So super, super great price point. And you don't have to feel like an asshole throwing lead around public lands. So there's that.
There's that. Yeah, there is that.
Yeah, there is. But let me tell you, like a really cool thing I've never seen or heard of before is that when I ordered the case, so this box comes in the mail with a bag of 200 shells, a canvas bag that is going to hold, I don't know, what would you say? Maybe like 3 boxes worth? What do you think?
Oh, for sure. I mean, it'll hold.
I mean, enough for a day's hunt, for sure.
Oh, it'll hold 80 20 gauge easy. Yeah.
Yeah. And then 2 boxes. So for the person that wants to have them in a box for some reason. So, but tell me I know why, but tell listeners why you guys have it set up that way.
Well, like habitat and conservation, we hate litter too. Just can't stand it when people don't pick up their hulls, and then you see like these nasty boxes that get wet and they just get destroyed. And then you have everybody has Ziploc bags full of a hodgepodge thing of shells, and everybody has them. I do. I probably still could find them laying around the farm here. We came up with this canvas bag idea of like including that with, and then we thought people could, then they'd have something, and the older the bag gets, the more patinate it becomes, the cooler that becomes. We eliminate boxing. We eliminate those things that get tore apart. People take them, dump them into their vest or their blind bag, and they throw the box away anyway. And it just, I don't know, it just seemed like a huge waste. And we want to eliminate waste. We did that, and then we start to take advantage of them and put cool designs on them, and we call it the money bag. Yeah.
You guys also do, is it once a year you do the Stamp It Forward campaign?
Well, this was our second year of doing it with Sam Soholt. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's cool. Tell us about that.
Well, let's see. Okay, so Sammy, he's got Public Land Tees. For those of you that don't know, go check that site out. Public Land Tees. It's a super, super cool program that Sam's got. He's way into habitat and conservation like we are. He's really all about public hunting lands, and just really easy for us to align ourselves with him. Well, he reached out to us last year about this. It was at Game Fair. Obviously, Game Fair in Anoka was canceled this year due to the COVID, but it was the year before. And he goes, "Hey, I got this idea for like how to generate money for the federal stamp program." And for everybody that knows, if you're a waterfowler, we all have to buy a federal migratory stamp. And you should read about that migratory stamp and where those funds go, because it's really a great thing, you know. So
is it like 90 or 95% of that?
I think it's 90. I think it's 98.
Okay. Oh, wow.
I think the real number is 98 goes into land acquisition or improvements, or it's just fantastic. Right. So we're like, heck yeah, man, we're in. So we made, what did we do last year? Was it just the bag? No, we did a straight cash donation. I think it was like $2,500 or something. And we bought a whole pile of federal duck stamps, and we sent Sammy like $2,500 bill, crispy Benjamins in a money bag, and sent it. And it was just a fun kind of deal. And we wanted to see if people thought it was cool. Well, this year we thought we'd try something different. So Brandon at the shop's like, "Hey, I got these old school green paper hulls, 12 gauge. Let's load up a bunch of shorties." We call a 12 gauge 2 3/4 number 5 a shorty. That's our nickname for it. So he's like, "Let's load them up in there, and we'll print the program on the stamp it forward on there. And then cases for conservation is like our deal for it, a Boss deal for it. And we printed that on the other side, and then printed the logo on a money bag, went out and did a little lifestyle shoot, product shoot and a lifestyle shoot for it, put it on a newsletter, and we thought we'd make 100. And we thought, well, let's just lay the newsletter out there and see how it goes. Well, it went just like completely off the rails, I think, in like 45 minutes. And then Brandon calls and he's like, "I'm going to go in the shop." And he went back to the shop and he said, "I have enough components to make, I want to say, another big number." Oh, and they sold out in like no time. So it really makes me happy to see people get on things like that for conservation and habitat, because I've done posts. If people are familiar with Boss and our Instagram feed, I've not had much luck with conservation type posts. I mean, they tank, but they just tank. No one, they don't get much. They don't get very many likes. Likes. I'm really into engagement. Let's clarify the like thing. The user word and the like, quite honestly, I can't stand the nomenclature. I mean, when I think of a user, I think of a drug addict, first of all. A follower. I mean, who the hell wants to be a follower, right? I mean, I want to be a leader. I don't know. But I don't like any of it. I really don't. But it's a great brand. It's a great brand awareness tool. Right. This social, when you can communicate with the customer. What I'm after is engagement. And I don't know if you follow Boss's feed at all, but we have massive engagement, right? Right. And I talk to these guys. We talk to these guys all the time. I spend a lot of time talking to them. Well, I love it. But anyway, when I do a conservation post, I don't get any engagement. And I'm like, are our constituents, are they like not into this? And then you start to think, you're like, well, who am I talking to? Well, you're on Instagram. 75% of Instagram users, followers are between the ages of 18 and 35. Okay. A real consumer is somebody that's about 28 to 35. They don't really. So who am I talking to here? So is there a whole generation of young people that are hunters and sportsmen that don't think about habitat and conservation? That's what I think.
I don't know. I feel like so I'm 38, and I feel like the people I hunt with
Mm-hmm.
are all very,
Up,
very conservative. But
you,
I live in, I'm by Missoula, so I'm,
yep,
Montana,
yep.
BHA, like,
You're out
very
there. Yep,
heavily. Yeah,
yep.
and I
You're
felt shamed because I'm the girl that came in that was shooting lead, and they're like, "Oh no, why aren't you
well,
shooting non-tox?" And like,
well,
well, that's just me being an asshole.
no. Well, no, there's no
But
public
it's
shaming should be
no,
part of that. But
I feel like the younger generation is almost more
all
well
right,
aware of it or trying harder. I don't know. I guess maybe that's
there's,
not maybe fair to
there's,
say, but
well, there's definitely a demographic by region
okay.
where it's stronger than in other regions. And that's a fact, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
But when you take conservation organizations and membership is declining, that tells me that you have an aging demographic that was part of that that's getting out of it, and there's not enough younger people getting into it now. But again, I'm not ragging on anybody. I'm saying if we do a better job of laying it out there and saying, hey, this is what we're really looking at here. Oh, I mean, I totally think the young people are going to do it.
Right. Right.
That's, by the way, that's where the real change in culture has to come from. It has to come from them, that age group.
Mm-hmm. I just don't see any reason why we wouldn't want to be more ethical, more responsible advocates of conservation. Why wouldn't somebody?
Why wouldn't
and you can't say it's the price. You can't say, well, it's going to be cheaper for me to shoot the lead because look, I'm showing you, I'm right here. It's not. This Boss, these 20 gauge are for $27. The same thing was $30. So, I don't know what reasons would there be not to make that change?
Well, there's probably a number of them. Well, first, let's take the cost. Let's take the cost thing. There are some really inexpensive steel shells out there, right? They're garbage. They're garbage. Mm-hmm. Okay. If you spend more money shooting a copper-plated Boss shell, especially on water, you're going to shoot way less shells and recover more game with that shell than you are with all that cheap steel. Okay. The only time steel's cheaper is the day you pull it off the shelf. Right? You look at a cost on the shelf and you go, oh, this box shell's cheaper. I'm going to buy that. That's the only time it's cheaper. It becomes more expensive all the time in comparison to Boss as time goes on, because you're not going to recover the amount of game. You're not going to kill it. You're not going to recover the amount of birds per shell shot becomes disproportionate. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Right? Like if you smack one with a copper-plated Boss, you're gonna get it.
Mm-hmm.
He's either going to be dead or he's going to really be hurt where you're going to recover it. Okay. Then I think you have things like, have you ever heard out there's this argument between groups, conservation groups, like, well, I don't want to spend $35 for a DU membership because I hear all the money goes to a bunch of rich fat cats in a giant corporate building in Memphis, Tennessee. Well, I mean, you can believe that. I guess if you want to believe that narrative is worth more than $35 for ducks, I personally can't get behind that, nor do I believe any of it. And well, Delta's better than DU, or DU's better than Delta, or Pheasants Forever's not doing enough, or Quail, or Rough Grouse Society, whatever, right? I personally am into all of them. I have a $20 bill or a $30 bill or a $40 bill. I have some time. I can help with photography. There's all kinds of things we can do to help. Donate some time. A little bit of money, really? $35? That's a shitty hamburger and a bad beer. Think about it. It's just, that's not even, if there's one 1.1 million waterfowlers in this country. Are you telling me what I think DU has, 670,000 members right now? Well, there's 400,000 laying out there that aren't a member. I don't get that either. But sign up, join up for Delta.
Yeah.
They do great things. They have
Right.
different conservation practices that they hang their hat on. We got room for both of them, and I have $35 for both of them. That's the way I look at Rough Grouse Society. I think they do fantastic things. I love their feed on Instagram. All habitat work for prairie birds, Hungarian partridge, sharptail, all those things. I don't know.
I'm a big advocate for whatever it is you're chasing after. You should be supporting that
100%,
organization.
100%.
That's working so hard to educate people, provide the habitat. Because if it's not for them, we're not going to have those birds. And I mean, you're right. Well, it's $35 to at least put in a little bit of your portion of doing that.
Snoop Dogg said it best. You can't talk about it and not be about it. And that's the way I look at it. Snoop, he's got some pretty good stuff,
He does. He does.
Oh, he does. Guy cracks me up. You can't talk about it and not be about it. Boy, is that the truth.
And another reason or something I wanted to mention. So when I went looking for non-tox options is when I came across your website, and I hit your website and I was like, I'm not sure what to think about this narrative, because I've been taught that, stay away from the words like heavy load. And as a woman, that those are going to blow your shoulder apart. And helping and putting on a couple women's events, I can tell you the number of women that are just nervous to pull that trigger thinking that it's going to hurt them. And so when I'm going through the website and everything is, we are boss men. I'm like, okay, what is this deal? Is this like, a shot that only a man can shoot? And what's going on? And so that's why I reached out to the company, and I'm like, all right, and Zach really put me at ease there. And I said, well, I'm going to try out these 4 boxes. And I was happy to report back to him and say, look, dude, you guys didn't hurt me.
Right.
And it wasn't. So, and I just think, for somebody that's looking at it, when I reached out to you about my thoughts on that, like, are these not woman friendly? Is there going to be too much recoil? Because I'm shooting a 20 gauge Siren Tempio light that weighs 5 pounds. Yep. So anything, I'm going to feel some recoil on it. It's not something I'm going to take to the range and practice with 100 rounds. Okay.
So first of all, that gun you're shooting is light. So recoil is more a function of that gun. Here's the caveat to that. What you put into the shell, the manufacturing of a shell, the load, is in direct proportion to what goes back into your shoulder. Okay, so if you shoot a more potent shell, you're going to feel more recoil, period. Right?
Right.
Okay. So when we use words, and we do use them, like copper-plated devastation and stuff like that, right? We do talk about that. It's only in response to other false narratives that are out there that need to be broken, right? Like you can make any shell fly at like ridiculous speeds with incredible chamber pressures and pressured steel shells at like hypersonic whatever at 1,700 feet per, whatever crazy numbers they come up with, right? That doesn't mean it's any good, right? And there is recoil associated with that. But when you build a shell right, when you build them the way they can be built, you eliminate that, okay? So I'm going to say this right now. I'm going to do a better job going forward here of talking to the gals. And I have avoided talking just to the girls because I don't believe in treating the girls any differently than the men.
Mm-hmm.
When I don't believe girls like pink piping on their outdoor clothing. I don't think they like pink socks. I could be wrong. They can
Mm-hmm.
DM me and rail on me for talking.
No,
I just don't believe that. I think the
Right.
ladies, the real ladies out there that want to become hunters that really aren't yet or are, I don't think they want to be treated any different. I think they're just when we lace the boots up in the morning and man, we're going hunting. We're all bossmen. We're all in the order of man. I couldn't come up with creating the brand. Are we going to, boss chicks, boss babes? Ick. No, we're not doing that. No, we're not doing that. So I hope, and I was going to say, I hope I didn't offend any, but I have, because I've got a few ladies that railed me for the Bossman thing. And I'm like, well, try to look at this in a little larger picture. We have, I actually did this. I think I did a post one day and it happened. It was a year or so, a couple years ago. It's on the feed. I think it's a picture of me kissing my younger daughter on her cheek after she'd killed her first duck, right? She's studying to be a doctor right now and she's in school all the time. And it's kind of crazy, at 30 years old, you get a phone call and she's like, Dad, I want to go duck hunting. And I'm like, what? Where'd that come from? Because she grew up with me and the fam forever and never really showed any interest in that, but she's way into the dog game. Docking, trained her golden retriever, and she's way into the clean meat, loves the food, loves the respect of the animal, loves being outside, loves to watch the dog go, wants to hunt. I'm like, cool, let's go hunting. So she takes gun safety. She does all this stuff on her own. She gets her stuff in order, get a gun. She starts to go to the sporting clay range. She starts to practice. We go duck hunting with One Shot Lou, Alex Brittingham, One Shot Lou down in Oklahoma, and Gertie shoots her first limit of mallards one day, right? It was really a cool deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what the cool part about that is, and I just worry about everybody being so sensitive about how you say things these days, so I'm going to try to be careful here. I don't want to cause trouble. But I think women are the biggest part of the growth of all of this going forward. So let me explain why. When I was a kid, there were I grew up in northern Minnesota, in remote northern Minnesota, on a hunting and fishing resort, and there were other resort community up there, and pretty much all the moms and dads were hunters and fishermen. Well, you can have a dad that's into hunting and the kids not get into it. They're into baseball or hockey or football or whatever they're into, whatever they get into. But you show me a family where the mom is a hunter or a fisherman, the whole family is. I've always thought the moms are the key. And when you get moms on it, because moms are into their
Yeah.
They're into their thing, right? They're into their kids, they're into their house, they're into what they eat, they're in all of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then when we talk about this conservation thing and this habitat and no lead, and we need young ladies on board bad. I couldn't come up with a name for just the ladies, so for all your listeners out there, you're in the Bossman. That's what you are. You're no different than we are.
Yeah, and I get that, and that's why I really appreciate the fact that when I reached out, it turned out to be exactly opposite than what I thought. And it's the whole hunter versus huntress. I'm a hunter, and
that's it. Correct.
Yeah, and so I I just really appreciate you explaining that and making it clear of like, it's just because I don't see you any different, and that's the way it should be.
I'll make a post. I'll put this on my list. I'll make a post and I'll reference our phone call.
Okay.
And which hopefully will bring awareness to what you're trying to do too. But my guess is you're really going after a female demographic. Is that?
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
I mean, that would be a great thing to do, right? And
yeah.
So I should do a better job at talking or explaining myself to the gals out there, but I don't want them.
Mm-hmm.
You're special to us.
Right.
But not different in the community, I guess. You're a hunter. You're either a hunter or you're not.
Right. And I think in our highly sensitive society, or where everybody feels offended about something, you'll get that. And it wasn't that I was offended. It was that I felt, well, this is what I've learned the whole time, of this kind of narrative is going to mean that it's going to hurt you. And so I wasn't so much concerned about, are you not a woman friendly? It was more of, is this going to hurt me? And I feel like I'm pretty tough. And so, I'm like I said, when I got those and I learned differently, and then we dug deeper into that narrative of, well, you might be scaring women away the same way I was, but don't be, because it's the exact opposite of, I just see everybody in the same light. I need
to do a better job there. No doubt about it.
I don't know if you do.
Yeah,
I think it's being educated. It's being. It's the same way of being educated, in the way that I've been educated, learning about the crippling, learning about the harms of throwing lead into our public lands.
What if we didn't have this conversation and I didn't explain that? I explained it to you and then you felt better about it. That's what I'm saying. I think I need to do a better job talking to them. I think I do. So take Tina, right? She's like a super badass chick, right?
Right.
Yes. She's not into the fashion show of hunting for the post.
Right.
Not into it at all. Right. If it weren't for, if there were no social media, Tina Dockin goes out with her dog by herself and goes hunting. She hunts ducks by herself. She's not afraid to go on big, long walks and hunt roosters by herself. I mean, she's a hunter, right?
Yep.
There's a handful of other ones out there, right? Like, I don't know. Do you know on Instagram, One Shot Lou? Alex Brittingham. She's got she's got Gator. She's got Gator, right? Okay. Lou is about as good hunting ducks on her own on the water as anybody I've ever been around, and that includes the dudes. Okay. Lou doesn't need her own pink anything, right?
Right.
Well, her name's Alex Brittingham. Her family calls her Lou, so I call her Lou. But anyway, One Shot Lou. And she has a name, One Shot Lou, for a reason too. I mean, she's quite the gal. So I mean, there's a number of them out there. I really would like to call on more of them to get that movement going with young girls in the game. I know they're trying. if anybody's listening and you need my help or you need our help, I want you to reach out to me. I want to help with that.
So on that topic, like the shooting sports is really huge. And like, I know there's a lot of young women in shooting sports. What's going on with, the lead versus non-tox in shooting sports? Do you have any insight on that?
I don't.
Okay.
And that's going to be a tough issue, right? Because of the my guess is, well, I mean, I told you before, it's really effective and it's really cheap, but it's really toxic.
Right.
So at some point it's going to become, but I don't know that. I would think there would be lobbying get in there on that one.
Okay.
I would think. I don't know.
Well, do you know people that are shooting Boss at the range, going through 100 rounds?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I shoot it, but
You are.
I mean, I own
Yeah.
it. That's not fair. That's not fair. That's not fair to say that. If I gave people that to try out, no. What we'd like to do is we'd like to develop a load that acted and behaved like that was non-toxic and somewhat more affordable than shooting inexpensive lead at the range. You know, it's a tough one. It's like all issues in our country, right? For something to really be an issue, there's both sides.
Yeah.
It's a tough one.
Yeah.
But certainly in the wetlands, the uplands, and all lands, when we're hunting, we should be shooting non-toxic. I mean, that's I won't bend on that one. But
okay. What are you using? Because 20 gauge, there isn't an 8. Like I always shoot 8s at the range.
Well, I shot a side-by-side 28 gauge all year at Sporting Clays, and I tested a new load that Brandon made. That's probably, let's say that, most likely available next year.
Okay.
And it was an 8-ish, 8.5-ish. And it was really cool. Really, really cool load. And I used it on teal. I gave it a good test drive on teal, the opener down in Missouri this year. And so, it's fun to go on the Sporting Clay course for a little bit and then jump right over into a teal pond. And,
sure.
It's just honing woodsmanship skills is like what used to be called when I was a little kid. I don't know what's called anymore, but that's what we have to get back to, things like that, being better at what we do.
More aware.
Oh, for sure. Awareness. It probably starts with awareness and education, and then people look at it and go, well, yeah, that makes good sense.
Right.
Yeah.
So anything else new in the works with Boss that you can tell us?
No.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, initiatives to try to help some of these things we're talking about.
Yeah. More in the
I don't know.
uplands.
I'm starting to think right now about how to get one going for young ladies. Get more people into the game.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. What do you think? What do you think I should work on?
I don't know. I'm so helpful.
Here's your shot. Here's your chance. You can tell me what you want me to do.
I don't know. I just feel like you've explained it to me in a manner where I understand it, and I'm content with that. So I don't know. And I've shot them, so I can just vouch for being like, whatever I may have thought through looking too much into narrative. It's not, it's fine. And I feel comfortable, when my son's ready or when my daughter's ready to shoot, that they're going to be fine too. So that was all. I just, it's because I was taught differently in looking and listening to those narratives of, if it says this, then it's probably something you should steer away from. And,
right.
And you educated me enough to know that that's not true. So,
right.
And so did Zach. He had a big hand in that.
Good.
So,
yeah. Well, he's a great dude.
Yeah,
he's a great guy. Let's catch up though in a few months and do it again. There definitely will be some conservation habitat type initiatives that we need to get out there, and we're going to need help on. And there'll be additions to the shot shell line, not a different shot, but certainly shot sizes and gauges, that will for sure happen. The clothing, all of our clothing is made and sourced here in the USA. We don't, that's practically taken us almost 2 years to make that hoodie and get that hoodie to where it is, but it's fantastic. I mean, it's so made in the USA. I don't know. That's what we're into.
Perfect.
We're into creating jobs, not losing any.
And people can find out more about bosshotshells.com.
Yep.
And
that's it.
What's an Instagram page, and do you guys have a Facebook page too?
Oh,
you do. I know you have a fan group. I'm in the fan group.
There's a Boss fan page. That's not like Boss official, but
right.
But they're the Bossman. Cool. They're on. They get on there. There's the dude's name's Justin O'Brien. We call him OB, and he's a fantastic moderator of that and jumping in the conversation and helping people. Like if somebody has a question on a choke, lay it out there, and they'll jump on that thing and they'll debate that thing to death. Right, which is super cool. And then we have our Boss Shotshell official Facebook page. We have at Boss Shotshells is our IG feed. And when somebody direct messages on that IG feed, you are 95% of the time you're talking to me. I'll be the one answering you, and feel free to, if you don't want to lay anything out there in a comment, although it's cool when people comment because they might get other people to jump in the question and help out that have more experience in something, which is the beauty of social, is taking advantage of other people's networks and their conversation. So,
right.
Awareness is huge. So, but yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks, Lee. I really appreciate you helping share everything about Boss, and but more above that of being an ethical hunter and one that's more aware and responsible.
Very cool.
So, thanks for listening to another episode of the Bird Dog Babe podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and learned something from the content, please share it with your friends. Please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast on whichever platform you're listening from. Check out the show notes for links to references from this episode, as well as info on how to connect through Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. If you're loving this podcast and want to support the production and content, please consider becoming one of my Patreon patrons. Being a patron connects us more on a personal level, where I'm able to help answer questions and give advice. My husband William and I have bred, owned, and trained AKC Master Hunters, Field Champions, NAVDA VCs, and AKC Show Champions. We're excited to not only share what we've learned, but also listen from previous and future episode guests for additional content. Go to patreon.com/thebirddogbabe and $5 per month and you're in. Through the Patreon platform, 5% is donated towards conservation, and an additional 5% is donated to the AKC Canine Health Foundation.
Until next time, Bird Dog Babes, keep them versatile.